He had everything: money, fame, power. But one snowy Christmas morning, a billionaire saw someone he never expected. A woman from his past, holding the hands of two children, who looked exactly like him. The snow fell gently across the city skyline, blanketing the world in quiet white. It was Christmas Eve, and the streets glowed with warm lights strung across shop windows and lampposts. The air smelled of cinnamon, pine, and something else William couldn't name, something nostalgic, almost painful. William Crane adjusted the cashmere scarf around his neck and stepped into the crowd at Marigold Lane, the city's oldest Christmas market. His black overcoat stood out among the families and couples bundled in cheerful reds and greens. Around him, laughter rang out as children darted between candy stalls and carolers sang near the town square's massive Christmas tree. But none of it touched him. He had walked this path many times over the years, back when he was younger, poorer, and in love. William Crane was a name known in every architectural and real estate circle. He had built towers that touched the clouds and owned homes in Paris, Dubai, and Manhattan. His face graced magazines, and his net worth was splashed across Forbes every year. He was, by every definition, successful. But success is a strange thing. It fills your pockets and empties your soul, especially when you forget why you chased it in the first place. As he walked past the children playing in the snow, William's gaze lingered on one boy, maybe 5 years old, throwing snowballs with his dad. Their laughter echoed in the winter air, and something inside him twisted. He had once wanted that life: a family, a home filled with warmth and love. Instead, he had floor-to-ceiling glass windows and silence. The past wasn't supposed to sneak up on you, but sometimes it did softly. Suddenly, William paused near a hot chocolate stall, not because he wanted one, but because a familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. It was gentle, it was warm, it was hers. He turned slowly, and for a moment, time stood still. There, no more than 10 feet away, stood Alina Jameson. She hadn't changed much. Her hair was longer now, curled at the ends, and she wore a green wool coat that matched her eyes. She was holding the hands of two children, a boy and a girl, twins maybe, about 6 years old, and William's heart dropped to his knees. The boy looked exactly like him. Same chestnut brown hair, same dimpled smile, same piercing gray eyes. The girl, just as unmistakable, had Elena's features, but his nose, his chin, his fire. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For a moment, he was 25 again, still in love, still dreaming, still whole. Alina had been everything to him once. They met in college. She was studying literature. He was already dreaming of building skyscrapers. She taught him to slow down, to feel. He taught her to dream bigger, to believe in magic again. But ambition is a cruel master. William had left her behind in pursuit of his empire, promising to come back when he made it. He never did. He had sent letters at first, even money, but calls became fewer, and visits never happened. One day, he called, and she didn't answer, and he convinced himself she'd moved on. Truth was, he had broken her heart, and now, she stood in front of him, smiling down at two children who looked just like him. Alina. His voice was barely above a whisper. She looked up, her eyes widening in disbelief. William. For a long moment, neither spoke. The twins looked up curiously. The boy tilted his head. "Mommy, who's that man?" William's heart nearly stopped. Alina knelt beside them. "This is an old friend," she said gently, but her eyes were wet, and her hands trembled. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. "I could say the same," William replied, trying to find words. "They're beautiful," he added, nodding toward the children. "Thank you," she said softly. There was a silence filled with 1,000 unspoken things. "Would you like to join us?" she asked hesitantly. William hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away. He wasn't ready. But something deeper, a pull he hadn't felt in years, guided him. "I'd love to." They walked slowly through the market together, the children skipping ahead. William kept glancing at them, at Alina, his mind racing. He wanted to ask a million questions. He wanted to know what he had missed. He wanted to know the truth. But more than anything, he wanted to know if it was too late to make things right. As the snow continued to fall and Christmas carols drifted through the air, one thought echoed in William's mind. What if those kids are mine? The walk through the Christmas market felt surreal. William's footsteps crunched against the snow-covered cobblestones, but the world around him felt weightless, like he was drifting through a memory that wasn't quite his anymore. Elena walked beside him, occasionally looking down at the children as they darted between stalls, their laughter rising and falling like a distant song. He didn't know what to say, and for once in his life, William Crane, the man who had closed billion-dollar deals with a handshake and a smile, felt speechless. The boy, curious and bright-eyed, came running back toward him, tugging at Elena's hand. "Mummy, can we get the gingerbread house again, like last year?" Elena smiled and nodded. "Of course, sweetheart." She turned to William. "Would you like to come? It's just around the corner." He managed a quiet, "Sure," though his heart was pounding in his chest. He followed them, half listening to the kids' chatter, half lost in a whirlwind of thoughts that had been buried for years. He hadn't dared to hope for this. Not really. And yet, here it was, a sliver of something real. At the gingerbread stall, the vendor recognized Elena immediately. "Same little ones, huh?" he said with a grin, reaching for 2 candy canes to hand to the kids. Elena laughed softly. "They remember everything. Traditions are serious business now." William watched them, the boy especially, the shape of his eyes, the way he tilted his head when he listened, the same way William did when he was a child. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was uncanny, familiar, undeniable. He wanted to ask, but he didn't, not yet. Elena handed over a few bills and took the gingerbread house, offering a warm thank you before they moved back into the quiet of the snowy path that curved out of the main crowd. The lights behind them began to blur, and the noise softened. They reached a bench under an old oak tree wrapped in tiny white lights, the kind that made the snow glow like magic. The twins sat on the bench, sharing pieces of gingerbread between them, while Elena stood beside William. In the hush of winter twilight, 6 years, William said suddenly. Elena turned to him. "That's how long it's been, hasn't it?" She nodded. "Almost 7. He swallowed hard. "I tried. At first I sent letters, emails. I didn't know if you wanted to hear from me. I got them," she said quietly. "I just couldn't answer. Not then." He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "And now?" She looked down at her hands, snowflakes landing in her dark curls. "You were building something," she said. "I didn't want to get in the way of that." And later, it just felt like too much time had passed. There was a silence between them, not awkward, just full of the things they had never said. "I thought about you," William whispered, "more than I should admit, especially during the quiet moments, when the world stopped clapping." She looked up at him then, and for the first time, there wasn't anger in her eyes, only something softer, like understanding. "They have your smile," he said, barely able to keep the tremor out of his voice. Elena didn't respond right away, but the weight of that moment wrapped around them like the cold. Finally, she spoke. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but I didn't want anything from you, Will. I never did. And by the time they were born, you were already somewhere else, doing something bigger." He stepped closer. "But they're mine, aren't they?" Her breath caught, her eyes shimmered, but she didn't look away. "They are." The words landed like a thunderclap, muffled by snow. William didn't know whether to cry or smile or collapse. Instead, he just stood there, frozen not from the cold, but from the realization that everything he'd ever thought he wanted had suddenly shifted. He turned slowly to look at the children again. The boy had made a mess of icing on his coat. The girl was giggling uncontrollably. His kids. He had missed 6 Christmases, 6 birthdays, first steps, first words, the first time they scraped their knees, or woke from a nightmare, or asked, "Where's my daddy?" A lump rose in his throat. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Elena, I didn't know." She nodded. "I know." Another long pause. Then, quietly, she added, "It wasn't out of anger, it was fear. I didn't want to disrupt your life. I didn't want to burden you. I didn't think you'd want this." He shook his head. "You have no idea how wrong that was." The kids ran back to them, laughing, interrupting the moment. The girl reached up and took Elena's hand, and the boy looked up at William curiously. "Are you going to come with us again tomorrow?" he asked. William blinked, his heart thudding. "Tomorrow? We always go to the Christmas parade," the girl chimed in. "Mummy says it's the best day of the year." The boy added, "You can come if you want. You look like you like Christmas." William chuckled softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'd like that very much." Elena smiled at the ground, then glanced at him sideways. "They're very trusting," good William said, "because I plan to earn it." As they walked toward the car lot together, something shifted inside him. Not a sudden change, but the beginning of one. He didn't know how to be a father. He didn't know if Elena could ever forgive him for disappearing the way he had. And he didn't know what the future would look like. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was stepping toward something real. Not a tower in the sky, not a headline, something human. He glanced up at the falling snow, remembering how he used to hate the cold, the mess, the delays. But tonight, the snow felt different. It felt like a gift, like something lost, finally being found. The parade was louder than William remembered. Drums echoed through the crisp winter air. Sleigh bells jingled from oversized floats, and confetti fluttered through the sky like colored snow. The streets were packed, every inch of sidewalk covered with cheering children, bundled parents, and camera phones raised toward the magic in the streets. Somewhere beneath the laughter and music, William felt his nerves tighten. He stood beside Elena and the twins, his hands deep in the pockets of his wool coat, as the marching band passed by in perfect formation. The children were sitting on a foldable picnic blanket, sipping hot chocolate and waving little flags that said merry and bright. To anyone watching, they looked like a family dot, but inside, William couldn't quiet the voice that kept repeating one question. Do I even belong here? The boy, his son, though the words still felt surreal, leaned back against him without hesitation. Just leaned, like it was the most natural thing in the world. William didn't move. He couldn't. That one simple gesture hit harder than any contract he'd ever signed, any ribbon he'd cut, any skyscraper he'd ever unveiled. Beside him, Elena was quiet. She hadn't said much since last night, and he didn't push. There was too much still unspoken, too much history between them to be swept away in one evening. But the silence wasn't cold. It was thoughtful, protective. Maybe. The girl tugged at Elena's sleeve. "Mummy, can we go see the carousel after?" "Of course," Elena said with a gentle smile. "But only if your brother doesn't fall asleep first." "I'm not tired," he declared, clearly offended by the suggestion. "I'm watching everything." William laughed softly, but it faded quickly as the next float passed. It was a model of a winter village, complete with moving parts, tiny skaters gliding over artificial ice, and a miniature man carrying a child on his shoulders. He watched it longer than the others, lost in thought. If someone had asked him a week ago what he wanted for Christmas, he would have said nothing. What could a man like him possibly want? But now, he would trade everything, every dollar, every building, every accolade for just one photo of the twins' first birthday, for one recording of their laughter from when they were babies, for one ordinary morning he had missed. He didn't realize how tightly he was gripping his gloves until Elena gently touched his hand. "You okay?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes searching. "I don't know how to make up for lost time," he admitted, "but I want to try." Her eyes didn't shy away from his. "That's all I've ever needed to hear." A small group of teenagers brushed past them, laughing loudly. One of them nearly tripped over the blanket and muttered an apology. William instinctively stepped forward, shielding the kids without thinking. And that's when he noticed something. A man across the street, staring, not just watching, staring. William's instincts flared. He had learned to recognize when people were curious, or wanted something, or simply recognized his face. But this felt different. "Elena," he said carefully, "do you know that man over there? Gray coat, navy scarf." Elena followed his eyes. When she spotted the man, her entire body stiffened. "What's wrong?" William asked, already stepping in front of the twins, but Elena quickly shook her head. "It's nothing," she said, but her voice betrayed her. It wasn't nothing. "Is he? He used to work for my landlord," she said quickly, forcing a smile as the man turned and walked away into the crowd. "He was just unpleasant." William didn't believe her, not entirely, but let it go for now. The moment passed, and the parade rolled on, but the unease lingered. After the final float drifted away, the kids tugged them both toward the carousel. William stood in line with them, his hands on their shoulders, while Elena bought the tickets. "You know," said the boy, looking up at him, "you kinda talk like me." William laughed. "You think so?" "Yeah," the boy said proudly, "and you laugh the same as me too." "Mummy says I got my laugh from someone very special," Elena returned, handing over the tickets. William held the boy's hand as they stepped onto the carousel, helping him choose the tallest horse. The little girl picked the swan-shaped carriage and waved from inside, As the carousel spun to life, William looked across at Elena. Something was changing, slowly, tenderly, but just as he allowed himself to believe in the miracle of this day, he noticed something again. The man, the same grey coat, watching from the edge of the park, only this time, he wasn't alone. He was speaking into a phone, then pointing, not at the crowd, at them. William felt a surge of protective instinct rise. Inside him, he didn't know what this man wanted, but something was wrong, deeply wrong. When the carousel stopped, he gently lifted the boy down. "Stay close to Mummy, all right?" The boy nodded. He leaned toward Elena. "We need to leave now." She saw the man again and didn't ask questions this time. Her face paled. "Come on, kids." They moved quickly through the thinning crowd, away from the park, toward the parking lot. William kept one hand in his coat pocket, where his phone rested, ready to call someone if things got worse. But they weren't followed. Not this time. Still, William didn't breathe easily until they were inside the car. Doors locked. Heat turned up. "What's going on, Elena?" he asked gently, as the kids dozed off in the back seat. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she whispered, "There's something I never told you, about what happened after you left." William looked at her, waiting. Elena's voice trembled. "I didn't just raise them alone. Well, I had help for a while, from someone I shouldn't have trusted." His chest tightened. "Who?" She closed her eyes. "My landlord. His name's Craig. He found out about the kids early on. I never told him who the father was, but he had ideas. And for a while, I was scared to leave. He made sure I knew what could happen if I tried." William's voice was quiet but steel-edged, "And now, he still tries to scare me sometimes. Shows up, follows us. I thought he'd finally given up this year, until today." William's jaw clenched. "He won't touch you, I promise." "You that?" Elena shook her head. "You don't understand." "I do. I may be late. I may have missed years, but I'm here now, and I won't let anyone threaten you or those kids. Ever." She stared at him for a long moment, her guard still half raised, and then, slowly, she nodded. The car sat in silence, the soft hum of the heater filling the space between them. Outside, the snow was falling heavier now, a blanket covering old pain, making way for something new. Neither of them said it aloud, but the feeling hung in the air. This was no longer just a reunion. This was the beginning of a reckoning, and Loveril's going to be tested again. It was nearly midnight, when William stood alone outside Elena's small cottage-style home. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, landing softly on the hood of his car and the sleeve of his coat, but he didn't notice the cold. Inside, the lights had dimmed. The twins were asleep. He'd helped tuck them in, quietly reading a bedtime story Elena had handed him, one he hadn't read since he was a child himself. Watching them drift off, tiny breaths rising and falling, had stirred something inside him that he couldn't fully name. Responsibility, yes, but something more. A longing, a protectiveness, a quiet ache for everything he had missed. Now, as he stood in the driveway, watching the golden glow through the frosted windows, that ache grew sharper, not because of what he didn't have, but because of what he might lose. Elena appeared behind the screen door, wrapped in a knitted shawl. She stepped out without a word, joining him on the porch. Her face was tired, but open. "I didn't think we'd get through today without something going wrong," she said softly, folding her arms. William turned to her. "I think we did all right." There was a beat of silence, then she looked up at him. "You meant what you said, didn't you? About protecting us?" He nodded. "I've spent my whole life building towers, Elena, watching people from 30 floors up, shaking hands and making deals that felt important. But tonight, I'd trade every last building just to make sure no one ever scares you again." She smiled, sad but grateful. "I want to believe that," she said. "But people make promises when things feel easy. It's staying when it's hard that tells the truth." William looked down. "Then I guess it's time I start proving who I really am." Before she could reply, headlights appeared at the end of the road. Not one pair, two. The cars crawled slowly toward the house, their engines low, like predators circling in the dark. One of them, a black SUV, rolled to a stop across the street. The other idled at the corner, barely visible behind the trees. William stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between the house and the road. Elena touched his arm. "That's him," she whispered. "Craig." The passenger window of the SUV lowered slightly, but no one inside stepped out. Just silence. and waiting. William took out his phone. "I'm calling someone." "No," Alina said quickly. "Not yet. If you escalate, he'll make it worse." "I don't care," William replied. "But I do," she said firmly. "I have to live here." He looked at her. Understood. Still, the situation felt like a coil winding tighter and tighter. Then the SUV pulled away. No threat, no words, just the unspoken message, "I'm watching." When the taillights disappeared, William exhaled. "You need to leave this place," he said. Elena turned sharply. "This is our home. It's not safe." She stared at him, eyes fierce. "You think we haven't survived worse?" William softened. "I don't doubt that. But surviving isn't the same as living." That landed. They stood there a moment longer, before she finally looked away. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "We'll talk then." William hesitated. "Will you be okay tonight?" She nodded. "I've managed before." He wanted to argue. He wanted to insist he stay. But this was her battle, and barging in with protection wouldn't solve what history had built. "All right," he said, turning to go. "But if anything feels off even a little, call me. I'll come back. No matter what, I will." He walked to his car, every step feeling heavier than the last. When he drove off, he checked the rearview mirror twice before rounding the corner. But he didn't know what haunted him more, the man watching from the shadows, or the silence that followed. By morning, the snowfall had thickened. William sat in the sunroom of his penthouse, overlooking the city that had once made him feel invincible. It didn't anymore. All he could think of was the warmth of that small home, the sound of those little voices calling out, the way Alina had looked at him when she realized she wasn't alone anymore, and the man in the SUV. He made a decision. The next call he placed wasn't to a friend. It was to someone he hadn't spoken to in years, a former client, a woman named Marion Locken, attorney known for making the powerful tremble. "William Crane," she said when she picked up. "This is unexpected. I need a favor." "I figured," Marion said with a knowing tone. "Big or legal?" "Both," he replied. "I need to make someone go away, cleanly, permanently, within the law." He told her everything carefully, and without dramatic flair. Just facts. When he finished, there was a pause. "Send me the details. I'll have something drafted within a day." "But William, this doesn't sound like business. This sounds personal." "It is." She paused again. "You're finally doing something that matters, aren't you?" "I think so," he said. That evening, William returned to Elena's house not as a visitor, but with a plan. Not to force her hand, not to take over, but to offer something she hadn't had in years: security. But when he arrived, something was off. The lights were off, the front door slightly ajar, and a child's scarf lay in the snow. He didn't call out. He ran. ChatGPT said. The silence was deafening. William's breath formed white clouds as he stepped through the half-open door. The inside of the cottage felt strangely still, too still. No laughter, no footsteps, no rustling of blankets or humming of lullabies. Just silence, broken only by the creaking of the door as it closed behind him. "Elena," he called, carefully, his voice caught in the air like a flare, unanswered. He crossed the threshold in 3 long strides, eyes scanning everything. The lamp near the window was still on, casting a pool of light across the floor. A mug of cocoa sat half-drunk on the table, steam long gone. The television in the corner blinked with a paused cartoon, one of the twins' favorites. But the house was empty, and something wasn't right. His heartbeat quickened as he moved toward the hallway, stepping over the tiny scarf lying on the floor, a pink one with a little embroidered heart. His hand brushed the wall for balance. He didn't want to think the worst. "Not yet, Elena." He tried again, louder this time. No answer. He pushed open the door to the twins' room. Their beds were rumpled, as if they'd left in a hurry. Stuffed animals lay scattered across the floor. A toy car was still spinning slowly on its side. He bent down, picked it up, and stared at the blue plastic in his hand, like it might hold a clue. Then he saw it, a note, folded, slid under the door to the back porch. He picked it up, unfolded it. 4 words, scratched in messy handwriting. "You were too late." His blood ran cold. Outside, the wind howled louder. William burst through the back door, scanning the yard, then the alley behind the house. Tire tracks, fresh, not covered by snow yet. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "Elena," he whispered into the receiver, hoping for a miracle. Straight to voicemail. He didn't hesitate. He tapped another number: Marion. she answered immediately. William, they're gone, he said, barely managing the words. Alina and the kids. Someone took them, left a note. Do not panic, she said calmly. Can you send me a picture of the note and the tire marks? I'll have someone on it in minutes. He sent them without thinking, hands still trembling. His mind raced, grasping for anything that could help him understand what had just happened. Why now? Why today? He'd promised he would protect them. And now he thought about the man in the SUV, Craig. That smug look. The silence. The threats Alina had dismissed, but never truly escaped. This wasn't a random act. It was a message. William paced the kitchen, unable to sit, his mind flashing through every memory of Alina, the way she'd always kept one eye over her shoulder, the way she hesitated before telling him the truth, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. When someone mentioned the word safe, he hadn't acted fast enough, and now the people he cared about most in the world had vanished. Then, a chime. His phone buzzed. A message from Marion, tracked his vehicle, registered to Craig Benton, Industrial Warehouse, Northside, sending, address now, don't go alone. But William was already moving. By the time he reached the car, snow was falling hard. He didn't care. He drove through the storm like a man possessed, headlights barely cutting through the whiteout, tires crunching over ice. His hands gripped the wheel like it was the only thing holding him together. As the city fell away behind him, the roads became darker, emptier. The warehouse district loomed ahead, abandoned lots, rusted fences, forgotten machinery, the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. He parked a block away and approached on foot, his coat soaked, breath ragged, heart pounding. He could see the warehouse now, lights flickering from inside, a faint glow through high, broken windows, and then, a sound, child's voice, soft, muffled. He didn't wait. He pulled out his phone, texted Marion, location confirmed, I'm going in. He slipped around the side, heart hammering, found a broken side door, barely hanging on its hinges. He slipped inside, crouching low. The warehouse smelled of rust and oil and old cold. Shadows danced across concrete pillars. In the far corner, he saw them, Alina kneeling, the twins beside her, a man pacing in front of them. Craig, he was ranting something about betrayal, about people thinking they could just leave him, about being owed something. His voice was low but sharp, filled with bitterness that had been growing for years. William stepped forward. Let them go. Craig spun. His eyes widened when he saw him. William Crane, he said, with mock admiration. Didn't think you'd care enough to show. I care enough to stop you, William said, voice steady. Craig chuckled darkly. Big talk for a man who built a city, but can't fix the mess he left behind. You're right, William said. I can't fix the past, but I can fix this. Alina looked up, eyes wide with fear and something else, hope. Craig stepped forward. This isn't your fight. You made it my fight, William said. The moment you threatened them, a tense silence hung in the air. Then sirens, faint at first, growing louder. Craig's eyes darted toward the window, then back to William. Something shifted in his face, panic, regret, anger. He lunged, but William was ready. They collided hard, knocking over a metal shelf. William managed to pin Craig's arm behind his back, just as red and blue lights washed over the warehouse walls. Don't move, came the command from outside. Craig froze. Officers burst through the main entrance, weapons raised. Within seconds, Craig was on the ground, cuffed, scowling. William didn't say a word. He ran to Alina and the twins, who huddled together behind a stack of crates. Alina reached for him immediately, pulling him into the hug. One child clung to each of them. I thought we lost you, she whispered, tears falling freely now. Never, William said, voice cracking. I told you I'm here now. They stayed like that, holding each other as the world spun outside. The snowstorm still raged, but inside, there was warmth again. A warmth that came not from comfort but from courage. Because sometimes, love doesn't come from perfect timing. It comes from showing up when it matters most. The sky had started to clear by dawn. After hours inside police stations, answering questions, signing statements, and ensuring Alina and the twins were safely relocated to a secure place, William found himself sitting alone in a small waiting room at the local precinct. He was exhausted physically, emotionally, but something inside him had settled. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running. He felt like he had finally arrived. A quiet knock pulled him from his thoughts. Elena stepped inside, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was pale, but her eyes had that quiet fire he'd always remembered, maybe even brighter now. "The kids are asleep," she said. "They're safe." William stood. "And you?" She hesitated, then walked over to him. "I don't think I've felt truly safe in years," she said. "Not really, not until now." He nodded. There was no pride in that moment, no sense of heroism, just a deep understanding of what it meant to carry someone else's fears, to take them into your heart as your own. "Elena, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice low, unsure, but she held up a hand. "Let me go first." He fell silent. "I know what we had ended messy," she said. "I know we both made choices we thought were right at the time, but I never hated you, William. I was hurt, yes, but not angry, not for long." She looked down at her hands. "When I found out I was pregnant, I thought about calling you 100 times, but something stopped me every time. Pride, fear, maybe a little of both. And then, life just kept happening, one hard day after another. I convinced myself you'd moved on, that you wouldn't care, that it would just complicate things." She looked up. Her eyes brimmed, but her voice held strong. "But seeing you now fighting for us the way you did, I realize I was wrong. You did care. Maybe you always did." He stepped forward, slow and careful, like every word that followed needed to be placed with intention. "I never stopped caring. I buried myself in buildings, in deadlines, in applause, but it was never enough. There was always something missing, and now I know what it was." She held his gaze. "They're your children." He nodded. "I know, and that doesn't scare you." He took her hands gently. "It scares me more than anything, but I want to be the man they deserve, and the partner I never had the courage to be before." There was silence, long and full of meaning. Then, a smile, soft, real. "We'll take it slow," she said. "Slow is fine," he replied, "as long as we're moving forward." The next few weeks passed in a blur, but not the kind that left you disoriented, like the rush of a story finally being written the way it was meant to be. William bought a modest home just outside the city. Nothing flashy, just enough room for late-night story time, backyard adventures, and walls that could hold laughter. He spent his mornings driving the twins to school, trying not to cry when they shouted by "Dad." Out the window, he helped Elena start her own art business, something she'd once given up when things got too hard. Together, they turned the garage into a small studio. She painted, he built frames. Sometimes the kids helped mix colors, leaving handprints on the walls. No one wiped them off. And one snowy evening, while the twins played under a fort made of pillows, William knelt down and opened a small velvet box. No grand gestures, no crowd. Just Elena, and a quiet question that meant everything. She said yes, but the real story wasn't in the proposal. It was in the everyday things that followed, like teaching his daughter to ride a bike, or holding his son's hand after a scraped knee, or sitting in silence with Elena on the back porch, watching the stars, knowing they'd both been lost once and now they were found. William had once believed that legacy was carved in concrete and glass. Now, he knew better. Legacy was found in whispered goodnight, in the small hands that reached for his at the dinner table, in the forgiveness of a woman who gave him a second chance to be the man he could have been all along. And when people asked what changed him, he'd smile and say, "It started one Christmas when I saw something I couldn't ignore." Because sometimes, it's not the moment we succeed that defines us, it's the moment we stop running and choose to show up.